You have no right to be here." Zara shouted, one hand protectively cradling her swollen belly, the other gripping the doorframe so tightly her knuckles paled against her dark skin. "I told you I never wanted to see you again." Adrian Knight stood in the hallway of her modest Harlem apartment building, his tailored suit worth more than 6 months of her rent. His face, usually composed for boardroom battles and tech magazine covers, showed genuine anguish. "Please, just 5 minutes," he said, lowering his voice as a neighbor peeked out from across the hall. "What I found, it changes everything. We've both been played." Zara laughed bitterly, the sound echoing in the narrow hallway. "Played? Is that what you call what happened to me? I'm 8 months pregnant with your child because of a mistake that destroyed my life, and you want to talk about being played?" "There are others," Adrian said, his voice dropping to a whisper. "Other women. This wasn't a mistake, it was deliberate. And someone is coming for our baby." The folder in his hand trembled slightly. For a billionaire tech mogul known for his ice-cold demeanor, the shake in his fingers was more alarming than his words. "I don't believe anything you say anymore," Zara hissed, though her heart hammered against her ribs. "Your lawyers made it very clear what you think of me." "That wasn't me. I fired them all." Adrian stepped closer, close enough that she could smell his expensive cologne. "Someone broke into your apartment last week. The police report says nothing was taken, but they were looking for something." Zara's face drained of color. She'd told no one about the break-in, not her mother, not her friends. She'd filed the report and tried to forget about it, chalking it up to random Harlem crime. "How did you know about that?" she whispered. "Because they broke into my penthouse too. Same night. Same method." Adrian's eyes locked with hers. "They're watching both of us. And they're waiting for our baby to be born." A sharp pain suddenly seized Zara's abdomen. She gasped, doubling over, her hand flying to her belly. "Zara." Adrian's voice seemed distant as another wave of pain washed over her. She looked down in horror at the puddle forming at her feet. "No," she whispered. "It's too early." Adrian's face went pale. "Is that—" "My water just broke," Zara said, panic rising in her throat. "The baby's coming." If you're enjoying this story, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, like this video and comment where you're watching from. Your support helps us bring more powerful stories, and trust me, you won't want to miss them. Now, let's get into the story. As Adrian reached for his phone to call an ambulance, Zara caught sight of a black sedan pulling up outside her building. 2 men in dark suits emerged, speaking into earpieces. "Adrian," she gasped, pointing toward the window. "Who are they?" He glanced outside, his expression hardening. "The people I've been trying to warn you about." He turned back to her, decision made. "We can't go to the hospital. They'll be waiting for us there." "What are you talking about?" Zara cried as another contraction hit. "I need a doctor." "Trust me one last time," Adrian pleaded, his eyes desperate. "If we go to a hospital, our baby will be taken from us before you even hold it." Zara clutched her belly, torn between the pain racking her body and the fear in Adrian's eyes. After everything he'd put her through, after all the lies and betrayal, could she possibly trust him now? The men outside were now entering her building. "Decide now," Adrian urged. "These people have legal documents claiming rights to our child's DNA. They've been planning this for months." Zara looked from Adrian to the door, hearing footsteps on the stairs. Another contraction hit, stronger than before. "Who would do this?" she gasped through the pain. "Who would orchestrate something so twisted?" Adrian's face darkened. "Someone who wants to destroy us both. And they're about to get exactly what they want, unless we leave. Now. Have you ever wondered how far you would go to protect someone you never planned to love? Someone who exists because of the worst violation of your trust?" The footsteps grew louder. Zara's decision would change everything, for her, for the baby, and for the man she'd sworn never to forgive. 6 months earlier, Zara Williams had been just another nursing student with big dreams and a small bank account. Her tiny Harlem apartment had felt like a sanctuary then, a place where she could study in peace, away from the chaos of the hospital where she interned. "You're doing great, Mrs. Jenkins," Zara said, adjusting the elderly woman's pillow with gentle hands. "Your vitals are looking much better today." Her supervisor, Nurse Gina, nodded approvingly from the doorway. "Williams has a natural touch with patients," she told the attending physician. "She'll make an excellent nurse when she graduates next year." Zara smiled at the compliment, though worry gnawed at her stomach. Her tuition payment was due in 2 weeks, and her savings account held barely half of what she needed. Without that degree, all her hard work would be for nothing. That evening, she sat cross-legged on her bed, surrounded by past-due notices and scholarship rejection letters. Her phone pinged with a text from her mother. "Baby girl, I wish I could help. Praying for a miracle for you." Zara wiped away a tear. Her mother had already worked 2 jobs for years to help get her this far. She couldn't ask for more. The next day, while scanning the hospital bulletin board for part-time job postings, a glossy flyer caught her eye: female volunteers needed for fertility study. Compensation, $25,000. The Manhattan Memorial Hospital logo gave it legitimacy. It seemed like the answer to her prayers. What Zara couldn't have known was that across town, in a gleaming skyscraper with his name on it, Adrian Knight was facing his own crisis. "The board is concerned about the direction of Knight Biotech's fertility research," his CFO explained, sliding a report across the polished conference table. "The investment is massive, but results are minimal. Shareholders are getting nervous." Adrian barely glanced at the report. At 35, he built an empire on calculated risks and ruthless efficiency. His cold demeanor had earned him the nickname the Ice King in business circles. "Tell the board I'll personally oversee the project from now on," he said, his voice clipped. "And schedule a meeting with Dr. Chun at Manhattan Memorial. I want to know exactly how our money is being spent." Dr. Patricia Chun had seemed professional and forthcoming during their meeting, showing Adrian's state-of-the-art labs and promising research data. What neither of them discussed was the pressure she faced from hospital administrators to produce breakthrough results, or the ethical corners she might cut to achieve them. 2 weeks after signing up for what she believed was a simple hormone study, Zara lay on an examination table in Dr. Chen's office, nervously awaiting what she'd been told was a routine procedure. "Just relax," Dr. Chun had said soothingly. "This won't take long." Zara had no reason to doubt her. As a virgin focused on her education, she'd never even had a serious boyfriend. The idea that this moment would change her life forever never crossed her mind. When she'd awakened from the mild sedation, Dr. Chun had smiled reassuringly. "All done. You'll receive your first payment by the end of the week." The money had arrived as promised. Zara paid her tuition and even splurged on a new pair of comfortable shoes for her hospital shifts. Life seemed to be looking up. Until the morning sickness began. Pregnant. Zara had stared at the home test in disbelief. That's impossible. 3 more tests and 1 blood panel later, the impossible was confirmed. She was carrying a child that could not possibly exist. When she'd confronted Dr. Chun, the doctor's face had drained of color. "There's been a mistake," she'd whispered, looking genuinely horrified. A terrible mistake. The mistake, Zara soon learned, was that she had been artificially inseminated with the sperm of Adrian Knight, billionaire, tech mogul, and major hospital donor. A man she'd never met. Adrian's reaction had been swift and cold. His lawyers had descended like hawks, demanding DNA tests, questioning Zara's character, suggesting she might have engineered the situation for financial gain. The media had caught wind of the story, and overnight, Zara became the virgin mother of a billionaire's baby. Her privacy shattered. Her dignity stripped away. Her dreams of becoming a nurse suddenly overshadowed by a scandal not of her making. "I don't want your money," she told Adrian during their first face-to-face meeting, her voice steady despite her trembling hands. "I want my life back." But there was no going back. Not for her. Not for the baby growing inside her. And not for Adrian, whose carefully controlled world had been thrown into chaos by a medical error that made no sense. What would you do if your most private choice was suddenly made public? If your body became the center of a controversy you never asked for? Now, 6 months later, as Zara faced Adrian at her door with contractions beginning and mysterious men closing in, the full scope of the conspiracy was finally becoming clear. This had never been a mistake at all. It had been a plan. A plan that was now entering its final, dangerous phase. The first public humiliation had come 3 weeks after the news broke. Zara had ventured out for groceries, her first trip outside since the story hit the tabloids. Isn't that her? A woman nudged her friend in the produce section, not bothering to lower her voice. The gold digger who trapped Adrian Knight. Zara kept her eyes on the apples, pretending not to hear. I heard she worked at the hospital specifically to get close to his sperm samples, the friend replied. Planned the whole thing. A lump formed in Zara's throat. She abandoned her half-filled cart and headed for the exit, only to be confronted by a man with a camera phone. Zara, how does it feel to hit the baby lottery? Any message for Adrian Knight? She pushed past him, tears blurring her vision, and nearly collided with an older black woman who caught her by the shoulders. Head up, child, the woman said firmly. Don't let them see you cry. Zara straightened her spine, took a deep breath, and walked past the growing crowd with as much dignity as she could muster. It was a small act of defiance, but it gave her strength. Back in her apartment, she found a letter from the hospital terminating her internship due to conflict of interest concerns. Her dream of becoming a nurse was slipping away. That night, she made a decision. She opened her laptop and began typing, "My name is Zara Williams. You've heard stories about me, but you haven't heard from me. Here's the truth about what happened at Manhattan Memorial Hospital." Her blog post went viral overnight. While some still mocked her, others began questioning the hospital's practices and Adrian's involvement. It was her first step toward reclaiming her narrative. Adrian had been furious when he read it. "She's making this worse," he told his PR team during an emergency meeting. "Control the situation." "With respect, sir," his new head of communications said carefully, "she's not saying anything untrue. And silencing her will only make you look guilty." Adrian paced his corner office, the Manhattan skyline spread out below him. For the first time in his career, he felt powerless. His company's stock was dropping. Board members were questioning his judgment. And somewhere out there was a woman carrying his child, a woman who hated him, with good reason. He picked up his private phone and made a call. "I need everything you can find on Dr. Patricia Chen. Personal history, financial records, communications, everything." What Adrian discovered in the following weeks shook him to his core. Dr. Chen's research notes mentioned an emotional response study that was never included in the official hospital records. There were coded references to subject Z and donor that corresponded with the timing of Zara's insemination. And most disturbing of all, there were emails between Dr. Chen and someone using an encrypted account, discussing phase 1 of a project that seemed to involve both Zara and Adrian. When Adrian had confronted Dr. Chen with this evidence, she'd broken down. "It wasn't supposed to be her," she'd sobbed. "The protocol was for a different subject. Someone switched the files that day. I didn't realize until it was too late." Who? Adrian had demanded. Who wanted this to happen? But before she could answer, hospital security had arrived, escorting her from the building. The next day she was gone, fled the country, according to his investigators. Meanwhile, Zara had been fighting her own battles. When Adrian's lawyers had offered her a settlement, with a strict confidentiality clause, she'd torn up the papers in front of them. "I won't be silenced," she'd said, her voice quiet but firm. "Not for any amount of money." What the lawyers didn't know was that Zara had been secretly recording the meeting, legally, in New York's two-party consent state. She'd posted select portions online, showing how they'd tried to buy her silence. The public reaction had been immediate. Hashtag #IStandWithZara began trending. Women's rights organizations reached out to offer support. A prominent civil rights attorney offered to represent her pro bono. Adrian had fired his legal team the same day. "You've made me look like a monster," he told the head lawyer. "She's the victim here, not the enemy." It was the first time Adrian had publicly acknowledged Zara's innocence. A small shift in the power dynamic that would eventually lead them both to her apartment door 6 months later, with Zara in labor and mysterious men closing in. What neither of them knew then was that Dr. Chun had left behind a trail of breadcrumbs, deliberate clues that would eventually expose a conspiracy far larger than a single accidental insemination. The first of those clues had arrived at Zara's apartment 3 days before Adrian's unexpected visit. A manila envelope containing hospital documents with her case number and the words Phase 1, Emotional Response Study highlighted in yellow. At the bottom of the final page, a handwritten note: "You weren't the only one. Find the others before they find you." Do you believe there are moments when trust becomes a matter of survival? When you must rely on someone who has hurt you deeply? For Zara, that moment had arrived with her first contraction and the sight of those men entering her building. Whatever Adrian had done, whatever lay between them, she knew one thing with absolute certainty: she would protect her baby at any cost. Even if it meant trusting the man she'd sworn to hate forever. "We need to go. Now." Adrian's voice cut through Zara's pain as another contraction seized her. "I can't just," Zara gasped, doubling over. "How do I know you're not trying to take my baby?" Adrian's eyes flashed with hurt, but he didn't waste time defending himself. "Back door?" he asked tersely. "Fire escape," Zara managed, pointing toward her bedroom. She grabbed her hospital bag, packed weeks ago in preparation, while Adrian peered out the window. "Clear," he said. "Can you make it down the stairs?" Zara nodded, though she wasn't sure. Another contraction hit, stronger than the last. "They're coming too fast," she whispered. Heavy knocking rattled her front door. "Ms. Williams? Manhattan Memorial Hospital Legal Department. We need to speak with you regarding your upcoming delivery." Adrian's jaw tightened. "Hospital Legal doesn't make house calls," he muttered. "And they definitely don't know your due date." He helped Zara through the bedroom window onto the fire escape. The metal creaked beneath them as they descended, Zara pausing every few steps as contractions washed over her. "My car's around the corner," Adrian said, supporting her weight. "We just need to." "Mr. Knight." A voice called from above. One of the men in suits leaned out Zara's window, phone in hand. "This doesn't concern you. We simply need to ensure Ms. Williams receives proper medical care." "Then why the legal documents?" Adrian shouted back. "Why the rush to get to her before the baby comes?" The man's face hardened. "Don't make this difficult. We have a court order regarding the infant." Zara's blood ran cold despite the sweat beading on her forehead. "A court order? For my baby?" "They're lying," Adrian said, urging her forward. "No judge would issue that without notifying you first." They reached the alley behind her building. Adrian's sleek black Audi waited at the curb, engine running, a stone-faced driver at the wheel. "James Hospital," Adrian commanded as he helped Zara into the back seat. "No." Zara clutched his arm. "You said they'd be waiting at the hospital." "Not this hospital," Adrian replied. "I have a private medical team standing by at a clinic in Connecticut. We'll be there in an hour." "An hour?" Zara cried as another contraction hit. "I don't have an hour." The car pulled away from the curb just as the men emerged from her building. One spoke urgently into his phone while the other ran for their sedan. "They're following us," Zara said, looking back through the rear window. Adrian nodded grimly. "James, lose them." What followed was a harrowing chase through Harlem streets, the driver executing sharp turns and sudden route changes that left their pursuers temporarily confused. Zara gripped the door handle, trying to breathe through contractions that were now coming every 4 minutes. "Who are they really?" she demanded between pained gasps. Adrian pulled a tablet from his briefcase and showed her a document. This came from Dr. Chen's private files. It's a contract between Manhattan Memorial and a company called Genix Biotech. Zara squinted at the screen. "What does this have to do with me?" "Look at the date," Adrian said. "This was signed 3 months before you entered the fertility study. And look at the language here, about securing genetic material of significant commercial value." Zara's eyes widened as understanding dawned. "They planned this? To get your sperm." "Not just mine," Adrian said grimly. "I found evidence of at least 7 other accidents involving high-profile donors. Tech innovators, athletes, Nobel Prize winners, all with specific genetic markers Genix is interested in." "But why me? Why not use a willing surrogate?" Adrian's expression darkened. "Because the study wasn't just about the babies. It was about emotional response patterns. They needed women who would react strongly, women with specific psychological profiles." "They were studying us? Like lab rats?" Zara felt violated all over again. The contract mentions maternal donor emotional dynamics as a key research component. They wanted to see what would happen when 2 strangers were forced into an intimate connection. Zara's next contraction was so intense she couldn't speak, could barely breathe. When it passed, she gasped, "How close are we to this clinic?" 40 minutes, Adrian said, checking his watch. "Can you hold on?" She shook her head, panic rising. "This baby is coming now." Adrian's composure slipped for the first time. "James, how far to the nearest hospital?" 15 minutes, sir. But they'll be watching all hospitals." Zara grabbed Adrian's hand, squeezing it painfully. "I need to push." Adrian made a split-second decision. "Pull over. Now." The car swerved into an empty parking lot behind an abandoned warehouse. Adrian helped Zara into a more comfortable position while James called for medical guidance on his phone. "I can't have my baby here," Zara sobbed. "Not like this." Adrian looked into her eyes, his usual coldness replaced by fierce determination. "Zara, listen to me. You are the strongest person I've ever met. You faced public humiliation, threats, and betrayal, and you never broke. You can do this." His unexpected faith in her gave Zara a surge of strength. She nodded, gritting her teeth as another contraction built. "James has a doctor on the line," Adrian said, putting the call on speaker. "We'll do this together." What followed was the most primal, intense experience of Zara's life. With Adrian supporting her back, following the doctor's instructions, and James standing guard outside, she brought their child into the world in the back seat of a luxury car behind an abandoned building. "It's a girl," Adrian whispered, his voice breaking as he wrapped the tiny, wailing infant in his suit jacket. "She's perfect." Tears streamed down Zara's face as he placed their daughter on her chest. For one perfect moment, nothing else mattered. Not the conspiracy, not the men hunting them, not the painful history between them. Then James rapped urgently on the window. "Sir, we've got company." Black SUV just pulled in. Adrian's face hardened. "We need to move. Now." "I can't," Zara said weakly. "I just had a baby." "I know," Adrian said, his voice gentle but urgent. "But if we stay, they'll take her." With James's help, they managed to get Zara and the baby into a more comfortable position. Adrian cut the umbilical cord with a pocket knife sterilized with his lighter, following the doctor's instructions precisely. As they prepared to leave, Zara noticed Adrian slip something from under the car seat, a handgun. "You came armed?" she asked, clutching their daughter tighter. "I came prepared," he corrected. "I won't let anyone take either of you." The SUV was approaching slowly, as if the occupants were unsure of what they'd found. "Wait," Zara said suddenly. I recognize that vehicle. Before Adrian could stop her, she rolled down her window slightly. The SUV stopped, and the driver's door opened. A woman stepped out, tall, elegant, with silver-streaked dark hair. That's Dr. Chun, Zara gasped. But she fled the country. Adrian raised his gun, but Zara put her hand on his arm. Wait. Look at her face. Dr. Chun approached cautiously, hands raised to show she was unarmed. Ms. Williams? Mr. Knight? I've been trying to find you. You've got a lot of nerve showing up now, Adrian growled. I had to disappear to gather evidence, Dr. Chun replied. I couldn't risk them silencing me before I had proof. Proof of what? Zara asked. Dr. Chun glanced nervously at the road. We don't have much time. They're tracking all of us. I need to show you something, but not here. Why should we trust you? Adrian demanded. Dr. Chun reached slowly into her pocket and pulled out a flash drive. Because I know who's behind all of this. And it's someone you both trust implicitly. The revelation hit Zara like a physical blow. Could this nightmare get any worse? Who could possibly want to hurt both her and Adrian so badly? As if in response to her mother's distress, the baby began to cry, a sound that seemed to affect Dr. Chun profoundly. Is that, she began. Our daughter, Zara said protectively, who apparently has a price on her head before she's even an hour old. Dr. Chen's expression softened. She's more valuable than you know. Her genetic makeup is unique, exactly what they've been trying to create for years. Who is they? Adrian demanded. Before Dr. Chun could answer, the sound of approaching sirens filled the air. We need to go, she said urgently. Follow me. I have a safe place. Adrian and Zara exchanged a look. The woman before them had been instrumental in the violation that had brought them to this point. Yet she might be their only hope of understanding the truth. If you're lying, Adrian said coldly, I'll make sure you regret it. Dr. Chun nodded grimly. If I'm lying, we're all already dead. Have you ever faced a moment when every option before you seemed impossible? When the only paths forward required trusting someone who had betrayed you? As their strange caravan pulled away, the Audi following Dr. Chen's SUV, Zara looked down at her newborn daughter's face. For this child, she would walk through fire. For this child, she would trust the untrustable. Even if it meant following the architect of her nightmare into the unknown. Dr. Chen's safe place turned out to be a renovated farmhouse 2 hours north of the city, nestled among trees and far from any main roads. By the time they arrived, night had fallen, and Zara was exhausted from the birth and the journey. There's a bedroom prepared upstairs, Dr. Chen said, leading them inside, with a bassinet for the baby. Zara clutched her daughter closer. I'm not letting her out of my sight. Adrian placed a protective hand on Zara's lower back. We'll need to see that evidence first, he said to Dr. Chun. Before anything else. The doctor nodded. Let me check them both first. A car birth is far from ideal. Despite her distrust, Zara allowed Dr. Chun to examine her and the baby. The woman's hands were gentle and professional as she checked vital signs and ensured there were no immediate complications. She's perfect, Dr. Chun murmured, looking at the infant with an expression Zara couldn't quite read. Have you named her? Zara hesitated. She'd had names picked out, but in this moment, with everything so uncertain, she wasn't ready to share that part of herself. Not yet, she said simply. After the examination, they gathered in the farmhouse's kitchen. Zara sat with the baby in her arms while Adrian paced restlessly, his eyes constantly moving between Dr. Chun, the windows, and the doors. Start talking, he demanded. Dr. Chun connected her flash drive to a laptop. What I'm about to show you goes far beyond an accidental insemination. This is about genetic patents, designer babies, and billions in potential pharmaceutical profits. She pulled up a series of documents, emails, contracts, research protocols. Inject Biotech isn't just interested in creating children with desirable genetic traits. They're developing a way to patent specific genetic sequences they believe could lead to treatments for everything from cancer to aging. That's not possible, Adrian said. You can't patent human genes. The Supreme Court ruled on that years ago. Not entire genes, no, Dr. Chen agreed. But you can patent synthetic DNA and specific applications of genetic discoveries. Genix found a loophole. If they could create children with specific genetic combinations and then develop treatments based on those combinations. They'd own the patents to those treatments, Adrian finished, his face darkening with understanding. Exactly. And the most valuable combinations would come from donors with exceptional traits, intelligence, physical abilities, disease resistance. Zara looked down at her daughter, sleeping peacefully in her arms. So our baby is just intellectual property to them. Potentially worth billions, Dr. Chen confirmed. But there's more. The emotional study component wasn't just academic curiosity. They're researching how genetic predispositions interact with emotional environments. Nature versus nurture, in real time. Adrian slammed his fist on the table. Who's behind this? Give me a name. Dr. Chen took a deep breath. That's the hardest part. It's someone who had access to both of you, someone who could orchestrate everything from behind the scenes. She pulled up a final document, a founding partnership agreement for Inject Biotech. The name at the bottom made Adrian physically stagger backward. No, he whispered. That's impossible. Zara couldn't see the screen from where she sat. Who is it? Adrian's face had gone ashen. My brother, Thomas Knight. The revelation hung in the air like a physical presence. Your brother. Zara repeated. The one who runs your charitable foundation? Adrian nodded slowly. My half-brother, technically. Same father, different mothers. He's always been in my shadow. I never thought he resented it enough to do something like this. He didn't just resent it, Dr. Chen said quietly. He's been planning this for years. The fertility research your company funded? He redirected it through shell companies. The hospital board members who approved the study? All have connections to him. And me? Zara asked. How did I get chosen? Dr. Chen looked uncomfortable. Your psychological profile matched what they were looking for, strong-willed, ethical, nurturing. And you had applied for a scholarship from the Knight Foundation 2 years ago. Thomas had access to your personal information. Zara felt violated all over again. Her entire life had been manipulated by people she'd never even met. There's something else you should know, Dr. Chen continued. You weren't the only one. There were 7 other women, all inseminated with genetic material from high-value donors. Where are they now? Adrian demanded. 3 miscarried. 2 terminated when they discovered the truth. 1 gave birth last month. The baby was taken into protective custody by Genix representatives, claiming a court order. And the 7th? Zara asked. Still pregnant. Due in 2 weeks. She's in hiding, but they're looking for her. Adrian ran a hand through his hair, his composure cracking. I trusted him with everything. He was the only family I had left. For the first time since this nightmare began, Zara saw Adrian not as the cold billionaire whose DNA had appended her life, but as a man betrayed by his own blood. Despite everything, she felt a pang of empathy. What does he want? She asked softly. Money? Your company? Both, Dr. Chen answered. But mostly, he wants what Adrian has always had, recognition. Acclaim. To step out of the shadow and be seen as the true genius of the Knight family. Adrian turned to the window, his shoulders rigid with tension. I gave him the foundation. I funded his projects. I never once treated him as less than my equal. But the world did, Dr. Chen said. And he blamed you for it. The baby stirred in Zara's arms, making tiny sounds of distress as if sensing the emotional turmoil around her. Instinctively, Zara began to rock her, humming softly. Adrian turned at the sound, his eyes drawn to the child, his daughter. He approached slowly, as if afraid Zara would pull away. "May I?" he asked, his voice uncharacteristically hesitant. After a moment's hesitation, Zara carefully transferred the baby to his arms. It was the first time he had held his daughter. His expression transformed, softening in a way Zara had never seen before. "Hello," he whispered to the tiny bundle. "I'm your father." The simple declaration, spoken with such raw emotion, broke something open inside Zara. Tears filled her eyes as she watched this man, whom she had alternately feared, hated, and resented, cradle their child with such tender care. "I will never let anyone hurt you," Adrian promised the baby. "Or your mother. Whatever it takes." He looked up at Zara, his eyes shining with unshed tears. "I'm sorry. For everything. For what my family has done to you. For not believing you from the start. For the lawyers, the media, all of it." The apology, so long in coming, washed over Zara like a healing balm. She had needed those words, needed to hear him take responsibility, more than she had realized. "I believe you," she said simply. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was a beginning. A tiny bridge across the chasm that had separated them. Dr. Chen watched their interaction with scientific interest. "This is what Thomas didn't account for," she said. "Genuine human connection. His algorithms predicted you would remain adversaries, fighting over the child." "Is that what he wanted?" Zara asked. "It would have made things easier. Divided parents, legal battles, the perfect opportunity for Genix to step in as a neutral third party, concerned only with the child's welfare." Adrian's jaw tightened. "And then they'd have legal access to her genetic material." "Exactly." The baby began to fuss in earnest now. Zara took her back, recognizing the hunger cries. "I need to feed her," she said, suddenly self-conscious. "There's a rocking chair in the bedroom," Dr. Chen offered. "More comfortable." Zara nodded and stood carefully, still sore from the birth. Adrian moved to help her, his hand gentle on her elbow. "Thank you," she murmured. Upstairs, in the quiet of the bedroom, Zara settled into the rocking chair and began to nurse her daughter. The intimate connection, this tiny person who depended on her completely, brought fresh tears to her eyes. "We're going to be okay," she whispered, not entirely believing it herself. Somehow. A soft knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. Adrian stood in the doorway, hesitant to enter this private moment. "Dr. Chen is making calls to her contacts," he said. "Trying to locate the other woman before Thomas does." Zara nodded, adjusting the baby slightly. "Do you think we can trust her?" "I don't know," Adrian admitted. "But right now, she's the only ally we have." He lingered in the doorway, clearly wanting to say more. "What is it?" Zara asked. Adrian took a deep breath. "I've been thinking about names. For her." He gestured to the baby. "But it's your decision, of course." The offer, his acknowledgement that she had the right to name their child, touched Zara deeply. "I was thinking of Hope," she said softly. "Because despite everything, that's what she gives me." Adrian's eyes softened. "Hope Knight Williams," he said, testing the name. "It's perfect." Knight Williams. Zara raised an eyebrow. "If that's okay," Adrian said quickly. "I don't want to presume." "It's okay," Zara said, surprising herself. "She's part of both of us." Adrian moved further into the room, sitting on the edge of the bed near the rocking chair. "When I first heard about the pregnancy," he said quietly, "all I could think about was damage control. Protecting my company, my reputation. I never considered what you were going through. You didn't know me, Zara said. I was just a problem to solve. That's no excuse, Adrian replied. I should have seen you, really seen you, from the beginning. The simple acknowledgement of her humanity, her personhood beyond the scandal, meant more to Zara than any apology. I see you now, Adrian continued. Your strength. Your dignity. The way you protect our daughter. And I. A crash from downstairs cut him off. Dr. Chen's voice called out in alarm, followed by the sound of breaking glass. Adrian was on his feet instantly. Stay here, he ordered, pulling the gun from his waistband. Lock the door. As he disappeared down the hallway, Zara clutched Hope tighter, fear coursing through her veins. Just when they'd found a moment of connection, a fragile piece amid the chaos, reality had come crashing back. She looked down at her daughter's face. I will protect you, she whispered fiercely. No matter what. Rising carefully from the rocking chair, Zara moved to the window. In the moonlight, she could make out several dark figures approaching the house from the tree line. Thomas Knight had found them. And the night was far from over. When was the last time you found connection with someone you thought you could never forgive? Is there a point where survival trumps even the deepest betrayal? For Zara and Adrian, that moment had arrived. Whatever lay between them, hurt, resentment, mistrust, would have to wait. Because now, they had something more important than their past. They had hope. They're coming from the trees, Zara called out, her voice steady despite her racing heart. She quickly moved away from the window, cradling Hope against her chest. Adrian appeared in the doorway, his expression grim. Dr. Chun says there's a panic room in the basement. We need to move. Now. What about her? Zara asked. She's buying us time. Come on. Zara followed Adrian down the back stairs, wincing with each step. Her body was still recovering from childbirth, but adrenaline pushed her forward. At the bottom of the stairs, they heard the front door splinter open. Mr. Knight, a man's voice called out. We're not here to hurt anyone. We simply need to ensure the infant receives proper medical attention. Adrian guided Zara toward a door hidden behind a bookcase in the study. They always lead with that lie, he muttered. As if we'd hand over our daughter to strangers with guns. The panic room was small but well-equipped, monitors showing security camera feeds, a small refrigerator, medical supplies, and a communication system. Adrian sealed the heavy door behind them just as the intruders began searching the first floor. On one of the monitors, they could see Dr. Chen being held at gunpoint in the kitchen by two men in tactical gear. Where are they? One demanded. Gone, she replied calmly. I sent them away hours ago. The man backhanded her across the face. Don't lie to us. Their car is still here. Adrian's jaw tightened as he watched. She's protecting us. Why would she do that? Zara whispered. After everything she did? Redemption, maybe, Adrian suggested. Or she has her own score to settle with my brother. On another monitor, they saw 3 more men ascending the stairs toward the bedroom where Zara had been nursing Hope minutes before. One of them spoke into a radio, 2nd floor clear. No sign of the targets or the infant. They're searching methodically, Adrian observed. These aren't hospital security, they're professional. Zara sat carefully on a small cot, adjusting Hope in her arms. The baby, miraculously, remained asleep despite the chaos. How long can we stay here? The room is stocked for 3 days, Adrian said, checking the supplies. But we can't just hide and hope they leave. Why not? Isn't keeping Hope safe the priority? Adrian knelt before her, his eyes intense. Zara, as long as Thomas is out there, we'll never be safe. Neither will Hope. He'll keep coming, with legal documents, with armed men, whatever it takes. So what do we do? Zara asked, fear giving way to determination. Before Adrian could answer, a new figure appeared on the security monitors. A tall man in an expensive suit walked calmly through the front door. Unlike the others, he carried no weapon. He didn't need one. "Thomas," Adrian breathed. Zara studied the man who had orchestrated their nightmare. He resembled Adrian slightly, the same height, similar bone structure, but where Adrian's features were sharp and defined, Thomas's were softer, almost boyish. His smile, as he surveyed the damage his men had caused, sent chills down Zara's spine. "Report," he said to the team leader. "No sign of them, sir. But they haven't left the property. Their vehicles are still here." Thomas nodded thoughtfully. "They're hiding somewhere. Keep searching." He turned to Dr. Chun, who was now seated at the kitchen table, a bruise forming on her cheek. "Patricia, I'm disappointed. After everything we built together." "You lied to me," she replied evenly. "You said the women were willing participants." Thomas laughed. "And you believed that? Come now, you're too intelligent for such naivety." "What do you want with the baby?" Dr. Chen asked. "There are ethical ways to conduct genetic research." "Ethics are for people who lack vision," Thomas replied dismissively. "My brother has always been celebrated for his visionary thinking, yet he lacks the courage to push boundaries. I don't." On another monitor, the search team reached the basement door. Adrian tensed, his hand moving to his gun. "They won't find us," he assured Zara. "This room doesn't appear on any house plans. It's completely hidden unless you know exactly what to look for." Zara nodded, but her eyes remained fixed on Thomas's face on the monitor. He looked so normal. How can someone do this? "Jealousy is a powerful motivator," Adrian said quietly. "And Thomas has lived in my shadow since we were children. Our father always favored me, groomed me to take over the company. That doesn't justify what he's done." No, nothing could. They watched as Thomas paced the kitchen, growing visibly impatient. "Bring me Dr. Chen's laptop," he ordered. When it was delivered, he opened it and began typing. "Let's see what other secrets you've been keeping, Patricia." Dr. Chen's expression remained neutral, but Zara noticed her eyes flick briefly toward a small device on the counter, a cell phone. "She's recording this," Zara realized. "Everything he's saying." Adrian leaned closer to the monitor. "Smart woman." On screen, Thomas continued, unaware of the recording. "The Knight Genetic Initiative will revolutionize medicine. Targeted treatments based on proprietary genetic sequences we control. Starting with the unique combinations we've created in these children." "You mean the children you forced women to bear without their consent," Dr. Chun corrected. Thomas waved a dismissive hand. "A necessary step. The legal system is too restrictive for true innovation." "And your brother? Was destroying him necessary too?" Thomas's face darkened. Adrian had everything handed to him. The company, the acclaim, our father's approval. He never had to fight for anything. He leaned closer to Dr. Chun. "Do you know what it's like to watch someone else receive credit for your ideas? I developed the initial genetic targeting system, not him. But whose name made the headlines?" "So this was all about revenge?" Dr. Chen asked. "Justice," Thomas corrected. "And progress. The children we've created will change the world, and the Knight name will be synonymous with that change. My name." In the panic room, Adrian's expression had grown increasingly troubled as he listened to his brother's confession. "I never knew he felt that way," he said softly. "About the targeting system, he presented it as our joint project. I made sure he received equal credit." "Equal isn't enough for some people," Zara observed. "Not when they believe they deserve it all." On the monitor, Thomas checked his watch impatiently. "Enough reminiscing. Where are they hiding, Patricia?" "I told you they're gone." Thomas sighed dramatically. I was hoping to avoid this. He nodded to one of his men, who produced a syringe. This contains a compound that will cause temporary paralysis. Quite painful, I'm told. Last chance to cooperate. Dr. Chen's composure finally cracked. You wouldn't. I've already orchestrated the impregnation of 8 women without their consent, Thomas replied coldly. Do you really think I'd draw the line at this? Adrian stood abruptly. I need to stop this. What? No. Zara grabbed his arm. You can't go out there. They'll kill you. They won't, Adrian said with certainty. Thomas needs me alive, to sign over company control, to take the fall when this all comes to light. And I can't let Dr. Chen suffer for helping us. Then I'm coming with you, Zara declared. Adrian shook his head firmly. Absolutely not. You need to stay here with Hope. If something goes wrong. He hesitated. There's an emergency exit that leads to a storm cellar and then to the woods. The keys to Dr. Chen's SUV are in that drawer. If I'm not back in 20 minutes, take Hope and drive south. There's a prepaid phone programmed with one number, my most trusted security advisor. He'll help you disappear. Zara's eyes filled with tears. Don't do this. We can find another way. Adrian cupped her cheek gently. There is no other way. Not if we want to end this for good. His eyes dropped to Hope, sleeping peacefully in Zara's arms. I never thought I'd have a child, he said softly. I never thought I deserved one. But now that she's here. You'll come back to us, Zara said fiercely. Promise me. Instead of answering, Adrian leaned forward and kissed her, their first kiss, gentle yet urgent, filled with everything they hadn't said. When he pulled away, his eyes held a determination Zara had never seen before. Take care of our daughter, he said simply. Then he was gone, slipping through the panic room door and sealing it behind him. On the monitor, Zara watched as Adrian emerged from a hidden panel in the study wall, hands raised. The search team immediately surrounded him, weapons drawn. I want to speak to my brother, Adrian said calmly. Alone. Minutes later, the security feed showed Adrian being escorted into the kitchen. Thomas dismissed his men with a gesture, leaving just the brothers and Dr. Chen. Adrian, Thomas greeted with false warmth. I've been looking for you. So I noticed, Adrian replied dryly. Breaking into my penthouse, sending armed men after a woman who just gave birth. You've been busy. Thomas smiled thinly. Where is she? Where's the child? Safe. Beyond your reach. Thomas laughed. Nothing is beyond my reach. Not anymore. He gestured to Dr. Chen. Your loyal doctor here has been quite helpful, though not intentionally. Her research notes provided the final pieces we needed for the patent applications. Patents that will never stand up in court, Adrian countered. Not when the truth comes out about how you obtained the genetic material. By then it won't matter. The treatments will be in development, the profits secured. Thomas leaned forward. I'm offering you a deal, brother. Sign over controlling interest in Knight Biotech to me, and I'll ensure you're portrayed as the victim in all this, a man betrayed by his trusted hospital partners. And Zara? The baby. Thomas waved dismissively. The mother can go free, with generous compensation. The child remains under genic supervision, for her own protection, of course. Adrian's expression hardened. You really think I'd agree to that? That I'd abandon my own daughter. Your daughter. Thomas laughed incredulously. Since when do you care about family? You've spent your entire life building walls around yourself. The Ice King, they call you. Incapable of human connection. People change, Adrian said simply. Not you, Thomas sneered. You're exactly like our father, cold, calculating, seeing people as assets or liabilities. Nothing more. You're wrong, Adrian replied. About me. About father. He didn't favor me. He was harder on me because he saw himself in me. His flaws, his weaknesses. Spare me the psychoanalysis, Thomas snapped. This isn't about childhood grievances. This is business. No, Adrian said quietly. This is about a little girl who deserves to grow up free, not as someone's science experiment. This is about a woman who's had her life turned upside down because of your obsession with beating me. Thomas's composure slipped, revealing the rage beneath. You have no idea what it's like living in your shadow. Every achievement measured against yours. Every idea compared to what the great Adrian Knight would have done. So you decided to destroy me? To use innocent women as pawns in your revenge fantasy? They were necessary sacrifices for a greater purpose, Thomas insisted. The genetic advancements we've made. Stop hiding behind scientific progress, Adrian cut him off. This was never about advancing medicine. This was about you wanting what I have. Thomas slammed his fist on the table. I deserved it more. I worked harder, sacrificed more. But you were always father's golden boy. In the panic room, Zara watched the confrontation with growing unease. Hope had awakened, fussing quietly in her arms. The brothers' argument was escalating, and Thomas's men were visibly alert to the tension. On screen, Adrian's voice remained calm despite his brother's outburst. I'm offering you one chance, Thomas. End this now. Release Dr. Chun, call off your men, and we'll find a way forward that doesn't end with you in prison. Thomas laughed bitterly. Prison? I've covered my tracks too well. There's no evidence linking me directly to any of this. Adrian smiled for the first time. Actually, there is. He nodded toward Dr. Chen's phone on the counter. You've been recording this entire conversation, haven't you, Patricia? Thomas's head whipped toward the device. You. Not just this conversation, Dr. Chen said, straightening despite her injuries. Everything. Every meeting where you discussed using these women without their consent. Every plan to patent the children's genetic material. Every order to your security team to obtain the infants by any means necessary. Thomas lunged for the phone, but Adrian was faster, grabbing his brother's arm and twisting it behind his back. It's over, Adrian said firmly. The recordings have already been uploaded to a secure server. If anything happens to us, they go directly to the FBI, the Medical Ethics Board, and every major news outlet in the country. Thomas struggled against Adrian's grip. You're bluffing. Try me. For a moment, the brothers remained locked in their standoff. Then Thomas relaxed slightly, a calculating look entering his eyes. Fine, he said smoothly. You win this round. Let me go, and I'll call off my men. Adrian released him cautiously. Thomas straightened his suit jacket, composure returning. Always the hero, aren't you, Adrian? Always have to do the right thing. He reached slowly into his pocket. But there's one thing you've forgotten. And what's that? Adrian asked. Thomas's hand emerged holding a small pistol. I've never played by the rules. The gunshot echoed through the house. In the panic room, Zara screamed as she watched Adrian stagger backward, blood blooming on his shirt. Thomas stood over his fallen brother, gun still raised. Where is she? He demanded. Where is the child? Adrian, clutching his bleeding shoulder, remained silent. Tell me. Thomas shouted, his composure completely shattered. Or I swear I'll finish what I started. In that moment, Zara made her decision. She couldn't hide while Adrian bled out on the kitchen floor. Carefully placing Hope in the small bassinet within the panic room, she retrieved Adrian's gun from the drawer. I'll be back, she whispered to her daughter. I promise. With determination born of maternal instinct and newfound courage, Zara activated the emergency exit. It was time to end this, not by running away, but by standing her ground. Thomas Knight had underestimated her from the beginning. He'd seen her as nothing more than a vessel, a pawn in his game against his brother. He was about to learn how wrong he'd been. What would you risk to protect the people you love? How far would you go when everything that matters is threatened? For Zara, who had once been defined by her caution and careful planning, the answer was now clear. Whatever it takes. The storm cellar exit led Zara to the side of the house. Pain radiated through her body with every movement, her body still raw from childbirth, but determination pushed her forward. Adrian's gun felt heavy in her hand, a weight she never thought she'd carry. Through a kitchen window, she could see Thomas standing over Adrian, who was slumped against the cabinets, one hand pressed to his bleeding shoulder. Dr. Chun remained at the table, restrained by one of Thomas's men. "I won't ask again," Thomas was saying, his voice muffled through the glass. "Where is she hiding?" Adrian's response was too quiet to hear, but Thomas's reaction, a frustrated slam of his fist against the counter, made it clear he wasn't getting the answers he wanted. Zara took a deep breath. She had no training with weapons, no experience with confrontation. What she did have was the fierce primal instinct to protect her child and the man who had risked everything to keep them safe. She moved to the back door, finding it guarded by a single man. Before she could retreat, he spotted her. "Hey!" he called, reaching for his weapon. Zara acted on instinct, swinging the heavy gun like a club rather than firing it. The metal connected with the man's temple, sending him crumpling to the ground. She quickly grabbed his radio and security card before slipping inside. The house was eerily quiet. Thomas had sent most of his team to search the grounds, leaving only 2 men inside with him. Zara could hear Thomas's voice from the kitchen, growing more agitated by the second. "The longer this takes, the worse it will be for her," he was telling Adrian. "Do you think I won't find your daughter eventually? Do you think I'll be merciful when I do?" Zara crept closer, staying low and out of sight. From her new position, she could see Adrian more clearly. Despite his injury, his eyes remained defiant. "You've always underestimated people, Thomas," Adrian said, his voice strained but steady. "You underestimated Dr. Chen's conscience. You underestimated my capacity to change." A small smile touched his lips. "And you've severely underestimated Zara Williams." Thomas scoffed. "The nurse? She's hiding, Adrian. Cowering somewhere with your precious offspring while you bleed out on the floor." "That's where you're wrong," Zara said, stepping into the doorway, gun raised. "I don't cower." Every head in the room snapped toward her. Thomas recovered first, his surprise quickly masked by a calculating smile. "Ms. Williams," he said smoothly, "I've been looking forward to meeting you properly." "Step away from him," Zara ordered, gesturing toward Adrian with the gun. Thomas raised his hand slightly, but made no move to step back. "You won't shoot me," he said confidently. "You're a healer, not a killer. It's in your psychological profile." "Profiles change," Zara replied steadily. "Especially when someone threatens my child." One of Thomas's men began to move toward her, but Thomas stopped him with a gesture. "Where is the baby?" he asked Zara directly. "Somewhere you'll never find her." Thomas sighed dramatically. "This standoff is pointless. Even if you manage to leave here today, I have resources you can't imagine. Legal teams, security personnel, connections in every major hospital and government agency. You'll never be free." "Unless those resources disappear," Adrian said, struggling to sit up straighter. "Unless the world learns what you've done." Thomas laughed bitterly. "And who would believe you? The word of a disgraced billionaire and an unwed mother against a respected philanthropist? I've spent years building my public image while you hid in your tower." "We don't need to be believed," Dr. Chun interjected. "We just need to be heard. The evidence will speak for itself." Thomas's smile faltered slightly. "What evidence? Your recordings?" easily discredited. Not just the recordings, Adrian said. The paper trail. The money transfers. The communications with the other women in your experiment. For the first time, uncertainty flickered across Thomas's face. What are you talking about? While you were hunting us, Adrian continued, my security team was hunting you. Every shell company, every offshore account, every communication with your research team, we found it all. You're bluffing, Thomas said, but his voice lacked conviction. Am I? Adrian nodded toward the window. Look outside. Thomas turned to see flashing lights approaching the property, police cars, moving at high speed down the long driveway. That's impossible, he whispered. How? The panic button in the safe room, Adrian explained. It doesn't just seal the doors, it sends an emergency signal with our exact location to both my security team and local law enforcement. Thomas's composure cracked completely. He raised his gun toward Adrian. If I'm going down, I'm taking you with me. Zara didn't hesitate. She fired. The shot went wide, hitting the wall behind Thomas, but it was enough to startle him. In that moment of distraction, Adrian lunged forward despite his injury, tackling his brother to the ground. The gun skittered across the floor. Thomas's remaining men, seeing the approaching police and realizing their employer's plan was unraveling, made the calculated decision to save themselves. They released Dr. Chun and fled toward the back of the house. Zara rushed to Adrian's side as he pinned Thomas to the floor. You're bleeding too much, she said, pressing her hand against his wound. I'm fine, Adrian insisted, though his face was pale from blood loss. Thomas struggled beneath him. This changes nothing. I still have lawyers, connections. What you have, Adrian cut him off, is evidence of conspiracy, kidnapping, assault, and attempted murder. Not to mention violations of every medical ethics code in existence. The sound of police entering the house ended the conversation. Within minutes, the kitchen was filled with officers, followed by Adrian's private security team. As Thomas was handcuffed and led away, he fixed Adrian with a look of pure hatred. We're brothers, he said bitterly. How could you choose them over me? Adrian, now being attended to by paramedics, met his brother's gaze steadily. Family isn't just blood, Thomas. It's choice. And I've made mine. Zara squeezed Adrian's hand before rushing back to the panic room to retrieve Hope. When she returned, cradling their daughter, the relief on Adrian's face was palpable. She's okay, he asked anxiously. Perfect, Zara assured him, kneeling beside his stretcher. Just like her father. Adrian's eyes filled with emotion as he looked at them both. I'm far from perfect. You showed up, Zara said simply. When it mattered most, you showed up. 3 months later, Zara stood at the window of Adrian's penthouse, watching the New York skyline glitter in the evening light. Hope slept peacefully in her bassinet nearby, tiny hands occasionally twitching in her dreams. So much had changed. Thomas Knight was awaiting trial, his empire crumbling as investigations revealed the full scope of his illegal genetic research. The other women from the fertility study had been found and offered support, medical, legal, and financial. Dr. Chun had turned state's evidence, her testimony crucial to building the case against Thomas and his associates. And Zara. Zara had found her voice. She'd become an advocate for medical ethics reform, speaking out about consent and transparency in research. The scholarship fund Adrian had established in Hope's name would help dozens of nursing students complete their education without financial strain. She heard Adrian's footsteps behind her, felt his arms wrap gently around her waist. Penny for your thoughts? He murmured against her hair. I was just thinking about how different things are now, she replied, leaning back against him. 6 months ago, I hated you. Adrian chuckled softly. With good reason. And now? She turned in his arms to face him. Now I'm living in your penthouse, raising our daughter together, testifying against your brother in what the media is calling the medical ethics trial of the century. Having second thoughts? Adrian asked, a hint of vulnerability in his eyes. Zara shook her head. No. Just marveling at how life can change so completely. Adrian's gaze drifted to Hope's bassinet. She changed everything. From the moment I held her, I knew nothing would ever be the same. It wasn't just Hope, Zara said softly. It was you. The man I met 6 months ago would never have put himself at risk to protect us. Would never have faced down his own brother. The woman I met 6 months ago already had that courage, Adrian replied. You never needed to find your strength, Zara. You just needed to recognize it was already there. A soft cry from the bassinet interrupted their moment. Zara moved to pick up Hope, who settled immediately in her mother's arms. The adoption papers came through today, Adrian said, watching them with undisguised love. For the other baby, Thomas's success story that was taken from its mother. And Zara prompted. The court approved our petition. She'll be placed with her birth mother, with full financial support for both of them. Zara smiled, relief washing over her. That's one more child saved from becoming a laboratory specimen. Thanks to you, Adrian reminded her. Your testimony was what convinced the judge. Zara shook her head. We did it together. All of it. Adrian took a small velvet box from his pocket. Speaking of together. He began, suddenly nervous in a way the confident billionaire rarely appeared. Zara's breath caught as he opened the box, revealing a stunning yet understated diamond ring. I know it's fast, Adrian said quickly. And I know we've done everything backward, baby first, then dating, now this. But these past months have shown me what matters, who matters. He took a deep breath. I don't want to pressure you. We can wait as long as you need. But I want you to know that I'm all in, Zara. You and Hope are my family, the family I choose. Tears filled Zara's eyes as she looked from the ring to the man holding it. This wasn't the cold, calculating businessman she'd first encountered. This was a man transformed by love and challenge, a man who had risked everything to protect what mattered. Yes, she said simply. Adrian's face lit up with surprise and joy. Yes. Zara laughed, the sound bright and free. Did you think I'd say no? After everything we've been through. As Adrian slipped the ring onto her finger and gathered her and Hope into his arms, Zara marveled at life's unexpected turns. What had begun as a medical nightmare had transformed into something beautiful, a family forged not through conventional means but through trial, courage, and ultimately choice. Outside, the city continued its endless rhythm. Inside, in the warmth of their embrace, Zara found a peace she'd never expected to find, especially not with a man whose DNA had changed her life forever. I love you, Adrian whispered against her temple. Both of you. More than I ever thought possible. We love you too, Zara replied, meaning it completely. Hope gurgled between them, tiny fingers reaching up to touch her father's face. In her daughter's eyes, Zara saw the future, bright, hopeful, and full of possibility. Sometimes, she reflected, the most beautiful beginnings arise from the most painful mistakes. And sometimes, what seems like the end of your world is really just the start of a better one. Have you ever found that your greatest challenge became your greatest blessing? That the person you once couldn't forgive became the one you couldn't imagine living without? For Zara Williams and Adrian Knight, the answer was sleeping peacefully in their arms, a tiny miracle named Hope, who had taught them both that family isn't defined by blood or circumstance, but by love and the choices we make every day. And that was a lesson worth all they had endured to learn it. Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed this story, you will surely love the next one. It's as crazier and more intriguing as you can ever imagine. So do check it out. Click on the image showing on your screen right now to watch the next one.